Okay, here's the question. The question is, what do we really think God thinks of us? Now listen, when we're doing everything right, we're doing good things with our wife, when we're praying regularly, going to church, whatever, we feel really good about ourselves. But what do we think God thinks about us when we screw up? Because we do screw up. And I think that's a huge issue that we have to face. It's a big question we have to ask ourselves. Jesus said to Peter, and he said to the other disciples when they were in the Garden of Gethsemane, and they had failed him when he needed them, Jesus said, "Your spirit is indeed willing, but your flesh is weak." See, Jesus looks at the disciples, and he looks at us, and he sees our willing spirit, and he is delighted in that. See, Jesus sees the spirit that he put inside us. There's a spirit that he gave us that's a willing spirit, that regrets doing things wrong, that wants to do things right. And Jesus sees that spirit even in the midst of our failings. And he says, I love that. I love you the way you are. See, because Jesus sees us from the end. We see ourselves in the middle of this journey. But Jesus sees us from the end. Remember what the angel said to Gideon? Gideon is cowering in a corner, hiding. And the angel says, "Rise up, O mighty man of valor." And you say, what? Gideon was a chicken. But God saw the spirit that he put inside him. He saw the new man. He saw the new heart. Romans says of Abraham that in all these things he remained faithful. And we say, Abraham wasn't faithful. He lied to Pharaoh about who his wife was, claiming it was his sister. He did not have a son after the promise to start with. He failed. He stumbled. And yet in all these things, Scripture says he did not waver. His faith did not waver. In Acts, it says that David did all the will of God. And we're saying David, he murdered one of his best friends. And yet it says he did all the will of God. Because God is looking at our willing spirit. God is looking at that thing inside us. See, do you remember Peter? A few days after the resurrection, he and his friends are off fishing. And Jesus comes then, Peter runs up to Jesus, and Jesus says, "Peter, do you love me?" And he says, "I love you." He said, "Gee, Peter, do you love me?" Peter says, "I love you." You got to remember, whenever Jesus asks us a question, it's not because he's missing information. He understands everything. He finally says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." The issue there was Jesus was saying, absolutely right. You do love me. I see that. I knew it, Peter. But after you had failed, after you had denied me 3 times, after you had failed, you doubted that I loved you. I want you to understand that I know all things. I know that you love me. So the question I have for all of us is, what do we believe deep in our hearts? What do we believe deep in our heart is God's attitude towards us? Jesus sees our willing spirit and he delights in it. Jesus sees our willing spirit and he delights in us. That's what we need to believe deep in our heart.